Hello and welcome to Database Management Systems. I'm Jimita Christie, and in this video, I'm going to explain to you the for loop and the while loop in PLSQL. So let's begin. PLSQL for loop executes a sequence of statements in a specified number of times. So it has this type of a structure. In this structure, the index is an implicit variable. It is local to the for loop statement. In other words, you cannot reference it outside the loop. Inside the loop, you can reference index, but you cannot change its value. After the for loop statement executes, the index becomes undefined. Both lower bound and upper bound are numbers or expressions that evaluate to numbers. The lower bound and upper bound are evaluated once when the for loop statement starts. Their values are stored as temporary values, and the results of the lower bound and upper bound are then rounded off to the nearest integer if necessary. If you modify the values of the lower bound and upper bound inside the loop, the change will have no effect because they are evaluated only once before the for loop starts. Typically, the lower bound is less than the upper bound, and index is set to lower bound, and statements execute and control returns to the top of the loop where index is compared to the upper bound. If index is less than upper bound, index is incremented by 1 and the statements execute once again and the control again returns to the top of the loop. When index is greater than upper bound, the loop terminates and control transfers to the statement after the for loop statement. If lower bound is equal to upper bound, the statements execute only once. When lower bound is greater than upper bound, the statements do not execute at all. Let's understand for loop with a simple PLSQL example.
The for loop in PLSQL has this type of a program. So in this case, again, I'm going to write all the code in Notepad. So I'll write begin. And it's very simple, a very small program. So I'll write down for, and I'll take a counter variable in, and we can specify a range. So it is 1 to 5. It's a range. So my for loop will run from 1 to 5, and the counter variable will get values from 1 to 5. And then I'm going to write down the loop. Now this loop statement is compulsory in PLSQL. So even if you're using a for loop, you need to write down below it the loop statement. And after writing loop, you can just print whatever you like. So I want to, of course, print my counter variable that I've created. So I'm going to do dbms output line, and I'm going to print the counter. And once the counter is printed, I can just end the loop and end my code. And once again, I'm going to copy this and go to my SQL command line. Since this is once again the first program that I'm running, I need to do set server output on so that the output statements print the values that I want them to print. And then I can paste my code, hit enter and /. And you can see it is printing all the values from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is because my range of this function was 1 and 2 dots and 5. So whenever we want to specify the range in the for loop, we specify it in this way by placing 2 dots between the two numbers and writing the keyword in. So it will give the counter variable these values. Here is the syntax for the while loop in PLSQL. The condition in the while is a Boolean expression that evaluates to true, false, or null. The while loop statement continues to execute the statements between the loop and end loop as long as the condition in the while clause evaluates to true. PL/SQL evaluates the condition in the while clause before each loop iteration. If the condition is true, then the body of the loop executes. And if it is false or null, then the loop terminates. If the condition is false before entering the loop, the while loop does not execute at all. This behavior is different from the loop statement, whose body is always executed at least once. To terminate the loop prematurely, you can use an exit or exit when statements, which have been explained in one of the previous videos. I have linked it down below. Let's understand the while loop with a very simple PL/SQL example. Now for the while loop, we are going to do the same type of code that we did with the for loop. So in this case, I'm going to write down here the while statement. And once again, here, I don't need to declare this counter variable in the for loop, but because it is a while loop, I have to declare the variable. So I'm going to declare the variable, and this is the counter variable with a number data type, and I'm going to start it from 1 this time. And once that is done, then I'm going to write down while, and after while, there always follows a condition that will tell when that loop has to exit. So instead of writing counter in 1 to 5, we need to write down that this counter should be less than or equal to 5. And after that, we'll just start the loop and we will print the output. And once the output is printed, I would also like to, at this point, increment the counter, because if I do not do this, then the counter will be stuck at 1. And if it is stuck at 1, then you know that loop will never end. So I need to increment my counter here. So I'll write counter equal to counter plus 1 and a semicolon. And once all that is done, we can end the loop and end the begin and end part. And our code is ready. So once again, let's copy this and go to command line, clear the screen here, and I'll paste this code. So I'll go on the top bar and paste. And then I'll do a /. And you can see once again it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the same as what it printed when we did the same type of program with a for loop. So this is how a while loop works in PL/SQL. The continue statement is a common programming construct in any programming language. And so we are also going to study it in PL/SQL. So in PL/SQL, the continue statement, as in other programming languages, is used along with the loops like for loop and while loop. It is used to skip an iteration of the loop. And I'm going to show it to you by creating a program that's going to print a very simple program. So it's only going to print even numbers and skip odd numbers in it with the help of a continue statement. So let us see. I'm going to use a for loop, so I'm not declaring anything here. I'll just start with a begin block, and I'll write the for loop. And once again, I'll have a counter variable that in this case goes from 1 to 10. And then I'll start the loop. I don't need to put it in the new tab. So this is the loop. And within the loop, you might already know that in SQL, we have a function called mod function. This finds out the modulo between a number and the number that's going to divide it. So modulo basically works in this way. If you provide a number to it and provide the number that needs to divide that number, then you will get the remainder instead of the quotient, which you normally get when you divide. So if you pass a number like 13 and divide it by 2, then the remainder is going to be 1 because 13 is an odd number. And if you pass something like 14 and divide it by 2, then the remainder is going to be 0 because it's an even number. So here I'm going to write a condition to check for odd numbers. So I'll just pass the counter. The first parameter is counter, and the second parameter is what's going to divide it. So 2 is going to divide, and here I'll mention equal to 1. Then notice here the use of equal to instead of colon and equal to. Instead of double equal to. In most languages, we use double equal to because that's how comparison is done. But in PLSQL, we use a single equal to instead of double because we are using a colon equal to for assignment when in other languages, there's only one equal to for assignment. So this is slightly new, but most of the programming things are same, so that shouldn't matter. After doing this, I'm going to write here the continue statement, and I'll explain to you what exactly it does once I have run this program. And at this point, I'm going to end my if condition. And here I'm going to print whatever number that I want to print, which is an even number. So here I'm going to print the counter. And once that is done, I will end the loop, which is there. So end loop, and then I'll end the begin that started, and my code is ready. I can once again copy this code and go to the PLSQL command line. And as you can see, there is some data here. So I'm just going to clear it and go to the top bar and paste this. So once it is pasted, I can hit a / and you can see it is printing all the even numbers between 1 and 10, which are 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So the way the continue statement works is it skips one iteration when this condition is true. So this condition is only true when it's an odd number. So when you write continue, then it does not exit the for loop. The for loop continues, but the current iteration due to which this if condition became true is going to be terminated. So that's why whenever it's an odd number, this is just going to terminate and it's not going to print the number. But if it's an even number, it won't terminate and it will print the number. So this is how the continue statement works in PLSQL. We can do a slight modification of the continue statement. Just like when we are doing exit, we have exit statement, but we also have the exit when statement. So similarly, we have the continue when statement. And to use that, instead of just writing over here if and continue, if you want to skip this whole part where you're writing if statement and then continue statement, you can just write continue when. So all I'm going to do is remove this if, and before that if, I'm going to write down continue when mod, and then this is the counter variable that I have. And I'm again checking that this is equal to 1 in this case. So it's the same code, but I'll remove this much part. So I have replaced the if plus continue statement with just the continue statement, with just the continue when statement. So now this is the statement, and I'll put a semicolon after it. And let me once again copy this code. Now go to my command line and clear everything that's here, and let me paste it. And a / to run it. And you can see it, as usual, prints the same kind of output that the previous program printed, but just that I've replaced my 3 lines with just a single line. So this is a much more efficient way of writing it. And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.